there's no single board that solves everyone's problem, right? And so there's no single methodology that would fit into every organization, because you've got a lot of variables such as the size and scale and the market, the kind that you operate in, the kind of workforce pattern.
There's a lot of talk at the moment about talent acquisition, going more into talent management, more into that employee life cycle. That's the way of truly evidencing the value. If you're thinking not just about the hire today, but you're thinking about, the activity tomorrow. Do you think there'll be separate teams still?
There's always this objective of what are we doing to, with any product or any step of decision that we're talking about, what is the productivity improvement through that, right? And that's a key focus across the culture.
Yeah. And what's when you talk about product and service, are you getting stuff built in India, or like these extensions of the business? What does that look like?
So the product that I'm talking about is both. I mean, we have an internal development team which is fairly strong, which is working on our Sporty product. So I'm not sure how how exposed to you are to our product and what we do as a business. But we have a fairly strong tech team, development team sitting out of Taiwan. So we've got development happening in there. We have backend developers sitting in Bulgaria. We've got teams sitting with our social media team sitting in UK and Spain. So we've got fairly diversified. We've got our analytics team sitting in Singapore. A lot of operational teams sitting in India and Africa. So good chunk all across the globe.
And the US must be a really interesting growth market for you from a customer base point of view, rather than from
frankly,
a people.
At this moment, our entire and I would say not even 10% or 20%, almost about 90% of our entire customer base is based out of Africa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
it's very interesting, and we don't even have 5% of our business intent or direction in US at the moment.
Wow. It's really unusual, because I think, work with a lot of, gaming businesses, and a lot of gaming businesses are looking at the US right now, where you've got 20 states that have, kind of legalized online gaming. There's 30 states to go, and people are thinking, well, there's, 2.5 times the market, left to capture from a population basis and from the number of states. Really interesting. And is that the continued path for growth for you guys in Africa? Have you got other core markets you're focusing on?
What people don't understand is that there's a different experience of working in untapped markets. Now, gaming is for that matter is a pretty solid business, and I wouldn't say it's nothing new about it, but the approach to gaming has been there in US for decades, for that matter, right? The whole, let's say, the Vegas is set up on the concept of gaming, in a matter of saying. So that market is already well saturated, well penetrated. There's loads and loads of players which is already existing over there, and I guess the population has the benefits of you've got the right customer base, you've got an experienced customer base, or someone that you don't have to new to sell to. They already understand the product, they are very much accustomed to it, and they're very much interested. So you've got a scenario wherein you've got the right amount of players available, businesses focusing on it, and you've got the right customer base which has the spending capacity, the interest in the business, and the product market fit. So it's a well connected scenario. However, for Africa, it's a completely different ball game. While there's a small level of interest, but there's a huge untapped market. And so we're working on that direction for us. Plus, our focus is football, primarily football. And Africa is pretty big on that.
Yeah. No, huge market, and really growing kind of national leagues and things as well. It makes sense. And then so you've got big teams out of Africa. But you mentioned some of the social stuff is in England and Spain, and the UK and Spain. Is that to then tap into that African market, or what's the setup there?
So that's basically the social media team. So some of my team members of social media are sitting over there, but we have teams based globally. So right from Bulgaria to Kyrgyzstan, I have remote people working for me in the Kyrgyzstan as well. So for us, location has not been a challenge in terms of having the right talent for working for Sporty. But I would say we have easily about 15 plus countries wherein we have people working for us. So we're globally in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, and I think well, it adds to your air miles, but I think it's a really interesting kind of setup for what is not an enormous business because as mentioned before, someone on my team is speaking to your team in the UK, right?
Mm.
And my understanding is that every role is basically available remote. I'd love to dive into how that works practically on your side and why that strategy was there, because I think it's fascinating, particularly in tech, right? Obviously in tech allows you to get the best talent that might not be in each territory, but yeah, what drove that decision to go
Well, it comes straight from the founders. I mean, the founders have been very pragmatic in their approach, in their thought process when it comes to, let's say, how we want to drive the organization. It's a very purpose-driven organization. Everything is looked at from a very, clear ROI perspective, there's always this objective of what are we doing to with any product or any step of decision that we're talking about, what is the productivity improvement through that, all right? And that's a key focus across the culture. So that way we have teams sitting in India, so we've got a full organization sitting in India. Again, there's a lot of we've got a whole customer setup sitting in Africa. So not that we don't have enough people. We've got more than about 300 plus people sitting just in Africa, focusing on the customer service side of things. We have a proper operational team sitting in India, now 2 offices in India, in both Mumbai and Delhi. So key locations, key market within the country, and they're all about supporting the overall operational side of the business. So from that angle, we have got stable locations as well as globally remote strength. But the objective has been very clear as to, we've got to work on productivity from each and every input, regardless of its location. And so location has never been a challenge because you can calculate the product.
And I'd love to know how you calculate the productivity. One thing I'm going to ask next though is how do you balance the salary per location, right? So is that a primary consideration? Is that secondary? Are you going for talent first, or are you balancing salary and talent and skills?
I mean, there's no single boat on it, right? It's such a variable scenario, and it has so many new elements added to it in every new location that you go to, that it has to be a blend and a hybrid thought process to both the talent, the objective of that position, as well as what the commercials could be. But when you look at it, you're also looking at it, what's the productivity or the return on that capital investment on that employee would bring to the organization. So you always have that factor in your mind. So if I have a talent sitting in Taipei, for that matter, and I have a gross understanding of that's going to cost me about $6,000 a month, let's say, I have that understanding that if I have to look for that talent in UK, if I have to look at that talent in Bulgaria, in India, what is the cost comparison and where do I find the best market fit? All right. Now, I can easily look into going to even countries like Pakistan, but, do I have that same level of productivity out of that talent? So I don't have an interest in having 4 people sitting to do one person's job. I would want more productivity out of that single person and sort of contributing to the organizational, because then the more number of people that you add to do the similar objective, the more delay or let's say the agility of that particular function goes down. So we want to have a high agility concept.
Yeah. I think it's so true. Like a small and aligned team focusing on one thing is often, almost always, better than having a bloated team with layers of management and complexity and stalling and holidays and sign-off processes and those types of things can definitely help things up. So how do you measure productivity? Because I think that's a wonderful concept, right? If you've got a winning formula for that, I want to take it. I get sure as well.
I could earn $1 million with that if I had the right answer with it. No, but I think our productivity is mapped more from the context of what do we need from that particular position. It's about not only just calculating what the person is doing, but also what is your expectations. Half of the times, and I've been part of the industry. I've been where you are as well. I've worked with Conferry, so I've come from the roots of understanding the root objectivity, reasoning of why before what. So, I've drilled deep enough to understand the strategic challenges for organizations. So, this is something that I learned from there is that if you don't have a clear objective of hiring someone and a clear purpose defined beforehand, it is very difficult for one to, or I'm not just saying one as a person who's helping in hiring, but I'm talking about the organization to take full utilization or build that optimization in the new resource being added because you're unaware what you need out of that person. So if you have that objectivity which is clear, you feel that I have this particular roadmap for this direction. In that case, you are far more, I would say, likely to make it happen.
And then you're far more, and I'm already probing. Do you know what this feels like, Ankit? It feels like we're recording a podcast right now, because it would be a great episode. But I want to ask you again. I do want to ask you again. But so you've got so I think that's important, right? You've got the bedrock at the beginning of it that says, this is why we're hiring this person. This is the objective, and then we're talking about tracking and measuring, I suppose, that individual against that objective or that team against that objective.
Yeah, and it's a roadmap. See, a roadmap is not about okay, I want X at Y timeline, and and the next stage and next stage. Roadmap is more about the direction and the thought process, and this is where we want to scale it up. All right. Now, scaling it up could be in many ways. I'm not just saying business growth scale up. I'm also talking about the capability scale up for that matter. So if this is the kind of product introduction that we have, this is the product roadmap. How soon can we turn this around? All right. But how efficiently can we turn this around is equally an objective. So you have to connect both the cultural aspect of the talent, the vision of the business lead over there. At the same time, you have to also look at what's realistic. And as you develop that roadmap, as you develop or as you walk on that roadmap, it sort of just combines itself and it's brings a different story by itself. And both the person who's leading that particular project as well as developing and the other person who's developing that project needs to believe in that story for it to make it happen. Otherwise, you're practically looking at a very difficult scenario.
I mean, you mentioned an email to me that you were just doing your kind of annual reviews, performance reviews, those types.
The quarter reviews. It's still sort of in that moment where I'm just completed, and it's always that funny, right? Wherein it's not easy. It's not easy to measure certain there are functions and there are particular teams that you can easily measure because there's certain data metrics to it. But then if I have to measure something like legal, tell me how to do it. Frankly, I would love to learn how to measure legal or how to measure marketing for that matter. I mean, I can do performance marketing, I can do other parts of marketing, but if I have to say I can measure the entire social media, but how do you measure what's the marketing objective? I'm yet to understand that part.
Yeah. I don't know if you can ever manage or measure legal. I'm not sure that's possible. But for sure, your technical teams, your sales teams,
those are much more easier. Because they're driven by a certain amount of data. So you can see the level of transactions or the level of inputs that goes through each of those phases that you can measure as to, this is where we are in our product roadmap. This is where we are supposed to reach and what sort of new challenges did we focus as an organization? How did we deal with it? So you can measure all of that because you can see a life cycle of a product.
And then here's a question for you. And I appreciate I'm just sitting here asking you questions and you actually asked to follow up with me, but I'm just fascinated now. So
sure.
You have to bear with me. So you're obviously sitting in the kind of HRD position, right? And we were speaking a lot at the event about talent acquisition, the impact of it as a function, like where it sits in this kind of, new emerging world. What's your view? How do you measure the output if you're measuring productivity, how do you measure the output of a talent acquisition function?
It would be very mundane to just say that, it's simple, because at the end of the day, talent acquisition as a function has been something that everyone has measured for years and years now. The matrices has been quite similar in terms of measuring that. But one thing that I feel could be introduced as a new direction of thought is it cannot just be measured like just straight away. Okay, this is the timeline that you hired, the turnaround time, the efficiency of from CV to hiring. Again, all of those are very clear, simple metrics, and one can easily measure that. What my interest was also to sort of think through was, and this goes with the life cycle of the employee also, is that what contribution did they make over their life cycle? How do you sort of bring that to your talent acquisition as a overall, let's say, an overall year-based analysis? I'm not just saying it should be measured every month or a quarter. Let's say put a cycle of a year and then sort of bring that productivity into the calculation as to if we are hiring. You can hire talent and you can be very efficient at hiring talent. But are you hiring the right talent? And is that talent bringing the right productivity to the organization? Is where a missing element is to measure. And that's a very different scale of measurement.
It is.
I'm not sure if it would be practical or not, but
yeah, I don't know how easy
something that I would like to measure.
Yeah, and I think we're getting closer, but I suppose it's then all of those variable impacts later down the line that come into it, right? At the front end, you can say we've hired these people, we've hired them efficiently, they've got into these positions, and those teams have been productive. I think we've got to be careful not to overreach. I'm thinking of this from a talent acquisition lens, right? But we've got to be careful not to overreach and think, well, we've hired those people and those teams are productive, so therefore, what a good job we've done. Because actually it's the environment that they're landing into, it's the productivity of that team, it's the things which their management have put in place, etc. I run a commercial function, right? And if we hit our target for the year, I wouldn't be going, oh, thank God that our recruiters made those hires, because that's basically what's done it. No. It's what we've done. It's what this individual's done. It's what marketing have done. It's what et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's really, really tricky, and we've got to make sure that we don't overreach. But then at the same time, with a longer time frame, with multiple teams, you could look at, hey, this was the productivity of new incoming employees before this recruitment function. This is the quality of the new incoming employees after this recruitment function. And if it's upwards trajectory across the board, then it's probably a good indication. But then there's the other massive variable that makes it really difficult to measure quality of hire.
Coming back to the reality. What if things go bad?
Exactly. Your organization, you're working for Zoom and COVID hits, and all of a sudden your share price rockets because everybody moves online. That's not necessarily a reflection of the recruitment team. They haven't just suddenly hired all the winners. So it's really hard.
This is the reason why I said that, one has to look at from a very, longer term perspective. One is the timeline to measure, and the other is it can't be measured in for team to team. It can be measured from a very 30,000 feet view angle. And how it sort of, the objective of it being, what's the ROI of doing this exercise? Let's talk about that primarily. What is the objective of doing that? The objective is that you're sort of giving a sense of, for example, you're going on a particular path, all right? From a very micro level, you're absolutely going straight. But the moment you sort of elevate yourself from that micro view, you're able to understand that while you think you're going straight, but the entire road is on a curve. You understand? Because you're looking at a very short scale. So what I'm trying to do is I'm sort of looking at that long-term direction of the talent acquisition function, which is part of the HR. It's not even the entire HR. It's an element of an HR. It's a strong pillar of HR. So is that even aligned in the same direction as the overall HR structure is? And and that structure is aligned to the overall organization structure or not? So I'm looking from that angle. So how do I sort of redirect or sort of nudge my roadmap for the talent acquisition function by having a broader view of the organization? That's the objective. That's the ROI that I'm looking at.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to ask you another question. And do you know what? I spend my time doing podcasts, and then occasionally on calls, I end up just.
I think I'm almost feeling that this is the same session like Javeed had.
Yeah, this is exactly it. I'm sorry, like we're going to end up. I'm going to have to ask marketing at the end of this whether we can just take this because I think it's great.
Sure.
And then, so do you think so? Again, HR lens on things. You've got talent acquisition, and there's a lot of talk at the moment about talent acquisition going more into talent management, more into that employee life cycle. That's the way of truly evidencing the value. If you're thinking not just about the hire today, but you're thinking about, the activity tomorrow. Do you think there'll be separate teams still? Do you like how do you see that evolving? Because there's some orgs that have got it all in one. There's most orgs have got it pretty separated, L&D, talent management, etc.
I would completely understand the dilemma for organizations because there's no single board that solves everyone's problem, right? And so there's no single methodology that would fit into every organization because you've got a lot of variables such as the size and scale and the market the kind that you operate in, the kind of the workforce pattern and the behavior of that workforce also matters a lot because if you're talking about industry specific, if you're talking about a manufacturing industry, their objective and their primitive and when I say primitive, I'm not saying the backward. I'm saying their historical way of working is different to a tech-based firm which can employ one employee in X and X country and one in completely halfway across the earth. So no single product or direction of HR can solve all these problems. It has to be customized based on your objectives of the organization. So I would say both of them, the hybrid or merging and being a holistic HR function will also survive through, and individual aspects would also survive through. Absolutely, because they both critically serve purpose and they're both justified in the objective of that firm. However, to analyze whether what works better for you is a matter of understanding what their really strong points are of both those objectives, and at the same time, are you ready to adapt to those challenges as well? Because both would come first with a certain scope of challenges, and if you're okay to digest that, and if you are able to see the end benefit of that particular objective, then yes, then that would be the direction to take.
I think it's again, it's one of those age-old conversations that feels like it resurfaces at every moment of like recruiting difficulty globally. When numbers drop, all of a sudden there's that appetite. On other, people are to think about your appetite when it's not dropping to go into it. Because for me, it makes total sense, right? When you're thinking about that quality of hire piece and you're thinking about that productivity ROI, well, you're a lot more involved if you're then partnering with that business area beyond the hire right through that journey. Then, put my commercial hat back on. If that was that full 360 cycle where you've got somebody guiding somebody, delivering training, making sure people are hitting certain milestones, having the check-in with both parts of the business, not just in the first 30, 60, 90 days, but throughout their career. And then thinking about pathways for people, etc. Like you can reach that level of maturity. I think you can start to lay claim
Absolutely.
to a bit more of the impact, right?
I think off lately and something that I've been working on a personal level is that how do I sort of bring that culture into the organization? And I think there's something that I've sort of identified for the organization is that given that we are a tech organization, I think there is a way to achieve that would be wherein you start treating each of your smaller sub functions within the overall. And when I'm talking about even TA, start putting all of your sub functions as product managers. All right, make them think like a product manager. That you this is your business unit, this is your product, and how do you improve efficiency on it is your perspective. All right, and make them the decision makers of that product. Once you start giving that sense of ownership, and then you sort of build a layer which not only measures each of the product, but sees the product, sort of the multitude of effect of different products coming together. All right. And that becomes their product. So I'm not sort of trying to build chains of command. I'm sort of trying to put everyone as an entrepreneur, like how we like to put it in more commercial TA format. You're an entrepreneur, you've got a business desk to deal with. You've got to build that client. You have to get the transactions happen, right? So you're a product person in that scenario, and in my perspective, that desk is your product, right? And then you've got the head of that particular industry, which manages multiple desks with individual product managers. So that's the mentality I was trying to bring into the perspective. And as you move towards a little more strategic level, is the same effect of that roadmap that I was earlier talking about, is that you've got individual product managers doing their perspective in shaping up the organization with the desired objective. But at the same time, you're also guiding them that this is the direction the whole organization is moving forward. This is the sort of impact that you are creating at the ground level. So once you give them a sense of feedback, I think one of the most critical aspect that is missing in TA as of today is the feedback from the organization. And there's no formal channel to that, not that I'm aware of. So if that feedback and the purpose of their transaction at the very ground level and the impact of their transaction at the very ground level, once that comes back to them, you will have multifaceted of benefit. One, their purpose. Every employee has a purpose. They will have a better clarity of their purpose. You don't have to motivate them. They will be self-motivated for sure, because they will see the commercial impact, they will see the productivity impact, and of course, they are managing a product by themselves. So there's a motivation driven by that as well. And then the sense of achievement. You're literally talking about the three key elements of an employee's absolute reason of being present there. The commercial being the fourth. So you're catering to three heads with a single one.
And I love that idea of product manager, product manager, product manager, product manager, overall manager, and you're almost mirroring the structure of the organization on the other side. You've got then your kind of CTO or your chief product officer that's then thinking about all of the squads and all of the areas that are working. They liaise with your kind of head of TA. You've then got each recruiter owning a desk. I think that's
absolutely
tremendous frame. And then, exactly, the purpose, the clarity, the focus that you're going to get from each individual. It brings it all together very nicely. And then I think you can start to measure quality of hire. Then I think you can start to measure the impact. Because you'll have one business unit that perhaps isn't performing, and if you've got attrition in one area of one of those teams, that's probably a combination of the manager within that team and or the recruiter bringing those people in.
And you can start working on pinpointing the areas of concern or something that's, it then becomes your nerve points. You know which particular edge is sort of hurting. And then you can start working on why it's hurting. And it's not necessarily always the employee which is not right. Maybe something that in your plan is not working right, which is not working in the same direction as the entire remaining of the outfit. So in that case, you can start quickly being agile and quickly reacting to that situation.
I love it. And I know there's organizations that almost run the recruitment teams like a product team, but in a different way to that framing, where they're doing, a 1 week sprint for sourcing, a 1 week sprint for interviews, a 1 week sprint for like feedback and offers, etc., and doing things in that kind of cycle, which I've always quite liked. I'm not sure, beyond the concept how fruitful it ends up being. But yeah, I love that kind of frame.
No harm in experimenting, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I love that frame, of product owners. And I wonder how that would work. I think it works very well in a tech organization. I think it could work well in some manufacturing, some engineering, but where it might be more of a challenge is maybe, although actually, no, even as I'm speaking out loud, I was thinking maybe like retail, it might be a challenge, or like high volume call center might be a challenge. But even within that, you'd have pods, you'd have teams, you'd have tables, you'd have desks, you'd have the measurements. So maybe you've cracked it, Ankit.
Not sure about that. There's a long journey for that. But yeah, I mean, and then getting everyone on board with this thought process and mentality is itself a business challenge, right? And I'm not saying that people are against it, but understanding and observing something and then committing towards working towards it is a very different. It's a parallel line, I would say. So either it's a parallel shift or it's just walking along, but it's not happening. So it's not easy to get that objective through to people. Always.
And I think it's like, it's like the HRBP role, but I think where this is different is somebody else, then has ownership of another part. Somebody else has ownership of another part. Somebody else has, and it's fragmented, right? And as you get into bigger and bigger organizations, it becomes increasingly fragmented, and then it's more difficult to attribute performance to an individual or think about, hey, this is HR as a whole's impact on this part of the org. Whereas I think what you're framing here is more like 360 people working in smaller groups to add to smaller deliverables. I think the challenge there, the only challenge that you might face is then how do you resource that if you've got one team that doesn't need anybody else because it's so productive? You know, how much can that individual that's aligned to that business unit tap into other areas to keep that there? What does their job spec then look like? Because are they a recruiter? Are they an L&D person? Is it a 360 role? How do you then balance that? Wait.
Sam, you would be surprised, and I'm saying it out of personal experience. You would be surprised as to how beautiful an experience is of a cross skilling. All right, and you would find answers to problems which you've been thinking through for a decade, and you will find answers coming through from people who have never worked in that industry or that function. And I've personally been privy to that particular situation wherein it's like eureka, all right, from that concept. So the moment you start bringing cross-scaling and cross-collaborations into workplay, be it TA, be it HRBP, be it L&D, be it Comp and Ben, across, and people love to grow. Right, this is typical human behavior we are talking about. People love to grow. Now they can grow from one angle vertically, or they can move, in directions which they didn't even think of. But that's your effort as a senior leader to be able to give that roadmap or sort of offer those options to the employees. Because I've seen people coming from talent acquisition to moving into training department for the operations business and doing better than seasoned trainers by themselves. So you have to focus on the skill set of the person to and match the role for them. That's something I think is should be a KRA of a leader, not just an initiative, but genuinely should be a KRA of a leader.
Yeah, and it's like this. I suppose even if you've got this concept of a 360 people person that's pod aligned or team aligned, actually you're going to have some teams that are going to be growing exponentially over the next 2-3 years. So you align somebody that's more recruitment focused. You've got some teams that are already large that need
more maturity in direction of strategic thinking.
Yeah. So I think you could do that. I think it sounds like the nirvana of where we could reach. But is it feasible to move an existing org from its structure where many orgs right now, many enterprise orgs right now will have essentially at the front an analytics and research team, a sourcing team, a recruitment team, an operational team, and then all of the teams that come thereafter in HR. But just thinking about the TA function, you've maybe in a very mature organization, you might have 70 or 80 job titles. And I think some of that specialism would still remain, but you're amalgamating maybe 6 to 7 to 8 to 9, maybe 10 roles into one role, and then playing that out, 10 to 12 times. I wonder how possible it would be to move a very large tanker into a model
which is why I said at the very beginning, each of these phases or different versions of the answer has its own challenges that as an organization you need to be ready to digest, and none of the transformation, none of the disruption will come at an ease. It's not even possible that disruption is coming at an ease to an organization. So for anything that you have to redefine, you will have pain points, you will have challenges, you will have people ensuring or dragging the overall progress. 100%. That is something that you have to prepare yourself beforehand. All right. But at the same time, if your objective is something that is aligned with the organization's objective as a business, and you've got the right support of other business leaders that, yes, this is something that we need to do. It's the need of the moment. And then you start building that purpose. Again, it's coming back to the very core point. If your objective of that particular project is clear, if your objective of hiring someone is clear as to what's your expectations from that particular project or that person, believe me, it becomes a far more easier way to identify whether this will work from that person or not. And then that's where your cross-skilling also works, is that you know what, I have someone who's open to challenge, someone who's open to take up a new objective and can adjust into that environment. Not necessarily he's the expert of that, but can he learn through that? Can he learn through that particular problem solving situation? If yes, then that's a better person to sort of bring into this disruption rather than someone who's sitting as 10-year balanced expert, running his desk very smartly. Great. So you maintain that skill set into the other format wherein that's already, I'm not going to rock the entire boat straight away. I'm going to do it in a phased manner. So that person still stays until this portion of the structure is much more refined and it's working by itself. And then that's when I can shift this pod over here and then start disrupting the remaining area. So there is no one way to anything like that. I mean, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think you've landed on it there, right? You know, you take it piece by piece. You don't try and take it all at once. And even within that, you could still have your specialist functions if you're a large enough org. There would still be the requirement to have a sourcing team, an analytics team, a kind of team that's focused on delivery, and it doesn't matter what business unit it's in. But it's almost that role of the, you know, how many recruiters could become a rounded 360 HRBP, L&D type, you know, and look at the whole picture, be a people person rather than a talent person. I think it's a wonderful context. And that's the end of the show, Ankit. It's been wonderful having you on. But genuinely, I am actually going to take this recording. And I'm going to ask marketing whether it's feasible to get it there, and I'll message you afterwards. I'm not sure they're going to be happy with the quality because it's on Teams, but it was not where I was expecting it to go. I thought we were just going to have a nice chat, but it was fascinating.
No, it was definitely something of a very engaging discussion. I'm glad I could add 2 cents to this overall concept.
Hey, this is it. Yeah, accidental podcast episode 24. So. Yeah, no, dude.
An impromptu podcast.
Exactly. Hey, they're the best ones, the best kind you can have. Pleasure catching up. And I suppose are you based in Dubai? Where are you based?
I'm based in Dubai. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'll probably be back in October if you're at the October event. So,
absolutely. Perfect.
Because it's definitely an interesting region for us. It's one to look at for sure. And then, hopefully the conversations with our teams progress.
Sure thing.
We'll be
looking forward to that
by that point. And then that means all the lunches and dinners and everything else, they were all on me all of a sudden.
I don't mind that.
But no, absolute pleasure, and I'm glad we had the chance to speak because we didn't get that much time to speak at the event, and I'm really glad we did today.
Wonderful. No, it's been a pleasure, Sam. I mean, I've had a pretty engaging discussion with you, out of the blue. So it was very candid. It was very, just thinking what was my, what's my thought process, and then sort of just speaking out of the
Hey, dude, I was just coming onto the call because you asked to follow up, and I thought let's just have a chat, and away we go. And we've accidentally recorded a really good episode of the podcast. I'm just hoping that it records nicely in the audio's there, and then I'll absolutely be messaging you saying I'm going to release the impromptu podcast.
Happy for you, man. That's wonderful. Great. All right. Great chat, and have a nice day, mate.
Yeah, you too, buddy. I'll see you soon.